you open up Instagram and you think you're following a car page, and all of a sudden it's a half-naked girl. And it's like, what the heck? It's like you can't even open up your Instagram in public because you're worried that you're going to have something wild on your screen. And
the Lord still sees that and will still hold you accountable for that, because you are still sinning against your brother by doing that.
So yeah, welcome back to the Christian Boys.
Hello. This
is another TCB podcast, and we're so glad to have you here. We're going to go over a lot of hot topics, a lot of hot takes.
Pockets. Our hot pockets, the Antichrist. That's going to be our first topic today.
That would honestly probably be a really good topic.
Dude, honestly, yeah, because they're molten hot like Satan.
Yeah, oh my God. Just going to tie it all around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness.
No, for real, though. We're going to go through some interesting topics today. Mm-hmm. First, we're going to be looking at Christians interacting with social media.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know who would be weird in trying to do that, but...
Yeah. Christians don't belong on Facebook.
Or YouTube.
Or MySpace.
Or TikTok.
Or Vine. All the cool social medias.
Dude, that hurt, man.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Vine being gone.
Yeah. My heart still hurts. Elon, bring it back.
I know. If he can take over Twitter, he can bring Vine back.
Yeah.
Like, come on now.
For real.
That was our childhood. Or our teenhood.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts surrounding Christians on social media? Like, what should be our mindset and our space? Like when we're first of all, should Christians even be on social media? Let's start there.
Yeah. I actually want to talk about that a little bit, because when we first started doing this, well, let me talk about that a little bit first, actually, before I even go into the social media side, because I think it'd be good for people that don't know why we started this or the whole story behind it.
Okay.
But essentially, like, we met through the ultimate providence of God, because literally it was one of our friends who was your server at Olive Garden. Mm-hmm. I know I'm kind of abbreviating the story here, but basically invited you to a Bible study, and then through that Bible study, you came to another Bible study that I was actually leading, which is our Thursday group, which you now lead with me,
right? Which
is awesome. So yeah, and that's how we ended up meeting, and then getting to know each other better. And then right before my, I guess it was my bachelor trip, is when we had this discussion.
Yeah.
But I had been feeling convicted to do something online, because I was learning so much through Mike Winger and all these other guys. And actually, I think it was one of his videos where he talked about, there's so much negativity and so much of the other ideals online. Christians need to have a staple. We need to step up and have a staple online, because there's so much of the opposite end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
In all sorts of different facets and directions.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we both, I think, were feeling called to this, and you mentioned it one night.
Yeah.
I've thought about doing this, but I'm just not sure and whatever. And so we talked, and we're like, we're both feeling these convictions. Like, let's flesh this out and see if maybe the Lord has something for us here. That's how eventually the Christian Boys was actually made, the name, and, us being dumb. And maybe we'll go into a full story one day on that. But my whole point in this is that we definitely felt this calling for YouTube. And I think there was no real conflictions there, because we saw so many people, already taking these steps towards YouTube, and kind of gave us that reassurance,
Mm-hmm.
But then as we started looking into it further and like, okay, what can we do to further this kingdom? And one of the things that somebody actually recommended to us was getting on TikTok. And my first reaction was, ew, no, I'm good.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. We both were like, no, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
TikTok is nothing but a cesspool for naked women and debauchery, like just awfulness, right? And so we were both like, no, this is not something we want to be a part of. But the person that recommended it to us had a really good point. He said, this is where the people are at. Jesus went where the people were at.
Yep.
Even though they were not doing the right things, he still went to them, right? He didn't ask for people to come to him. He went to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're trying to do. And one of the biggest ways to reach people now is online.
Yeah.
So what better way than one of the hugest platforms right now, which is TikTok?
Yeah.
And honestly,
as unfortunate as that is.
It is very unfortunate. But if we can be that moment of light in somebody's feed and give them a taste of Jesus for that brief second, and maybe make them rethink. Yeah. Maybe point them back to the YouTube, which the YouTube points back to Christ, right?
Yeah.
Which is our whole goal anyways. And I'll be the first to say that I'm not the best at the TikToks, and I struggle with them, and you are so much better at it. But I definitely think we need to be there. Yeah. And we need to be putting out the right material. And in my opinion too, is that even if we weren't doing just biblical study, even if say we were doing a car channel or a fitness channel or whatever, still needs to be pointing back to Christ.
Yeah.
Because no matter what interest we have, because I have 1,001 interests, so I'm the first to know what that's like to be interested in lots of different things. But whatever I do, I always want to be able to point back to Christ.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we are trying to do with our abilities that we have to be online.
Yeah.
So
when it comes to more like evangelistic goals on social media, I'm reminded a lot of the parable that Jesus gave of the sower, where it's like, the sower went out into the field and he sowed wherever the seed went. He was like, it goes on the path. Okay, cool. It goes on the rocks, it goes on the thorny places, it goes on the good soil. It goes all over, right? This sower is just throwing wherever and isn't really concerned about making sure that it's being, sparingly preserved. He's just like, I'm just going to go everywhere. And, no matter how it's received, my job is the same, and I feel that that's been a lot of our motivation for being on platforms like TikTok or Instagram. Like, honestly, when we first started, we just wanted to do YouTube. We didn't want to do any of the other platforms. We just wanted to focus on YouTube, and that was good. But then YouTube had just started doing shorts. And so we're like, okay, well, I mean, if that's going to be something that we're going to make for YouTube, why not post it on Instagram? And if TikTok is where all the people are, like, why not post it to TikTok? It's like, yeah, exactly what our friend said. Jesus went where the people are. And, Jesus said in Matthew, like, go and make disciples. Don't wait for disciples to come to you. Jesus called his disciples himself. He didn't wait for them to find him so that they could be like, please teach me. He was like, no, you fishermen, drop what you're doing and follow me. He went to them.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have the opportunity using social media, an amazing opportunity that's like unique to any point in human history, is that we can talk to people who are thousands of miles away in seconds.
Yeah.
And what better way to spread the gospel? And so we feel called to be a part of spreading the word about Jesus and the gospel and his kingdom through online platforms.
For one, the seed sower is perfect because that's exactly what we're doing. We don't care about the views and all this other stuff. Like, that's cool if we get them, but our main point is that the people that we do reach, like I've said it, I know to you 100 times, that I don't care if it reaches 2 people or 1,000 people. It's not about that. It's about changing the hearts or giving somebody what they need in that second.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about, again, the number of people we reach. It's just about reaching them.
Yeah.
And also, something else that maybe when you were talking that made me think of is that the Lord calls us to go in the world but not be of the world.
That's good.
We need to be in the world and not of the world, right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Exactly what we're talking about. Going in the world and spreading the light, being the salt and light to the world, but not being a part of the world. We're not on Instagram shaking our booties, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
yet.
It may get better views, but...
oh my gosh. Not us.
Yeah, we ain't got the dumping for that.
No, we do not.
No, my whole point is that, we're not being those guys that are selling out for the views. We're trying to genuinely give people what they need because they need it.
Yeah.
And that's the simple truth and the end of it,
Well, it's interesting you say that about selling out for the views. In the very, very short time that we've been on social media, I've noticed, especially on TikTok and Instagram, there are certain topics where if I make a short about that or I make a reel about that, I know it's going to do way better than some others. And I'll just be honest. On TikTok, our most viewed videos are ones where I'm going through being like, hey, believe it or not, this passage doesn't mean what you think it means, right? It's like presenting a new interpretation of Scripture that may not be super popular. Still true, still plausible, not necessarily what every pastor has told you your whole life, which I think is great. But here's the thing. The temptation with that is that I could just make something up, The temptation is like, I could totally rip that scripture out of context, like plenty of pastors have done in the past, and make it mean what I want it to mean.
Yeah.
And that's so dangerous. And I could sell out for views, knowing that that's going to get me a lot more views than making something that's going to be actually biblical.
Or making content just for the controversy of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is just as wrong, because then you go into not spreading peace to people, but spreading chaos.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're trying to do either. Like if we put something out that's controversial, it's because we're doing it out of love and out of truth, not out of, let me see how much I can tear people up. You know, like we don't want to do that either. So we've got to guard our hearts against it, because that's one of those that when you look at it from the big picture, it's like, oh yeah, that's just obviously wrong. But when you look at it from a smaller perspective, it's like, okay, it's something that you could easily slip into.
Have you ever seen the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma?
I don't think I have.
Well, it's really interesting. You should watch it. But it's basically how social media has affected our perception of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Where basically the way the algorithm works is it prioritizes content that gets engagement, right? Well, humans are naturally more drawn to things that make them emotional. So things that'll make you cry, things that'll make you laugh, things that'll make you angry, but especially anger. People are 3 times or 4 times, I don't forget the number, but they're far more likely to interact with a post that makes them angry than they are any other emotion. And companies and people who are trying to make something of their social media presence know that. And as a result, they make content that pisses people off. It's why CNN and Fox News are 2 sides of one coin that all they do is try to piss people off in order to get attention. You know? Like, CNN just tries to piss off Democrats, being like, you know, the right is so evil. And Fox News does exactly the same, but they try to piss off the right. You know? And it's like, oh, and by the way, we're making a video about cussing, so if you think that piss is a cuss word, go ahead and watch that. But like that's what social media is like, is that engagement gets more results. But as a result, people are, the more they're engaging with a certain style of content, the more that they see that style of content. To the point where they don't see, like, if you're like a liberal conservative, not liberal conservative, that's an opposite. If you're like a liberal, Democrat, you're going to see, and you start interacting with posts that are more leaning that direction, you'll start to only see that on social media, right? Whereas someone on the other side of the political fence, they're going to only see that kind of content for their party, to the point where there's such a divide because you don't see any of the other side's opinions. You don't see any of the other side's content. And so you live in this echo chamber of like, everyone I see online agrees with me. How are you seeing anything differently? And then there's a clash. That's why we're so divided as a people right now. So I think social media has a lot to do with it.
Well, yeah, and I think that even goes into the church and what we see going on right now with divisions, because that's exactly it. If you only ever see your church and you only ever have studied in one denomination, it can be easy to say, well, I'm part of the people of God, everyone else isn't, And so we got to remember that too, within our own walk and our own heart, or even just, if you're not in my church, then you're not good enough. I think people get that. I don't know what it is, if it's like a tribal mentality, but anyway,
it's very tribal.
That happens as well. So even without social media, I think that happens. But then, you add social media on top of it, and whether it's politics or church or whatever it is, you're just going to be fed more and more and more of that thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're hoping that as people see this content and maybe do interact with it, because it maybe does affect them negatively at some point. Yeah. Eventually it's going to change their heart to being towards this content, if that makes sense. Yeah. Being towards Christ, because that's what we want to do, is just continually point people back to him. Yeah. All the Christian boys are, Christian is little Christ. It was something that was to be made fun of back in the day. And they said, okay, fine. It's going to be the name of who we are. Yeah. And they embraced it. Same thing with the boys. It's funny. It's dumb. People have made fun of us for having BOIIZ because they're like, oh, that's so stupid. We're like, good. It's supposed to be. Yeah. Because we're not supposed to be the center of attention. No. We're not supposed to be the Jacob and Brenton show. No. It's the Christ show. Yeah. And we're just a part of that.
Yeah, we couldn't care less what people think of us.
Yeah.
That's why when we get all these comments that are like, dude, you suck, we hate you. It's like, so what? Like, literally. As long as you hear what we're saying, I don't care.
Literally, somebody commented on my beard the other day. I was like,
that was amazing.
Dude. I was like, I don't care. Like, it's a beard. Like, what? That's the level of what you get. Yeah. It's like when you literally have nothing else to say, because we're speaking truth and light into people.
Yeah.
They attack things like that.
The amount of comments I've gotten on my tattoos.
I know, man.
Dude, yeah, we should actually probably make a follow-up video about that. But, that's
we're gonna do that. Yeah, definitely, because I think it's definitely a topic of the day.
Now, when it comes to should Christians be on social media, just to answer that question, 100% yes. Because, if the Apostle Paul were alive today, I think he 100% would be on YouTube. Mm-hmm. No question. Because, you know how far your reach can be as a Christian? Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I will also say this. There is also the temptation because of the because of how the algorithm works. When you're posting, yes, there's always that case. But let's say that you're just somebody who kind of just likes to consume content, but occasionally you leave comments or things like that on people's wall or on a YouTube video or something like that. Please remember that you represent Christ even when you're anonymous. Mm-hmm. So if you're going around to, videos that you disagree with and you're cussing people out or you're being irreverent or you're not representing Christ well, hey, maybe no one knows who you are. Maybe you're going under a pseudonym online or you just have a fake channel name or something like that. But if you're going on there and you're still acting in a sinful manner, the Lord still sees that and will still hold you accountable for that because you are still sinning against your brother by doing that.
Yeah.
And so there's this double-edged sword to this. You got to be careful.
Well, and again, like you say, falling into temptations, that's part of it, but also the temptation to look at things that you shouldn't be looking at. Because when we talk about should Christians be online, we're talking about more of a broad statement here because obviously we're not the norm. Most Christians are not trying to start their own podcast. No. I think that the Lord just really convicted us for that, and that's what we've done. We've tried to follow in His will.
Yeah.
However, most Christians that are on here are either consuming content like ours or trying to better prepare themselves or even just keeping up with people that they care about, right?
Yeah.
But there's always that temptation there to find other things that you shouldn't be a part of. And it was funny, me and my brother were talking a while back about, you open up Instagram and you think you're following a car page and all of a sudden it's a half-naked girl. And it's like, what the heck? It's like you can't even open up your Instagram in public because you're worried that, you're going to have something wild on your screen. And I thought about that, and this was several years ago now, but I said, this is just not right. I follow this for the cars, but if they're going to continue to post this kind of stuff, I don't need to be exposed to it. Not because I'm not a grown adult and I don't know what that is, but because I know that it's going to lead me into sin and temptation.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a small thing, and people may go, well, you're just exaggerating. No, that is a slow move of your heart towards the wrong direction. And that's what sin does. It's not you don't go from something, not ever sinning to being, just this horrible sinner. It's a slow process, just like moving towards Christ is a slow process.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing is I just stopped following all those pages.
Yeah.
I was like, forget this. If they can't stop posting this stuff because they know it gets the views, they know they're going to get more likes on it, then I'm not going to follow them anymore. I really enjoyed looking at the cars and, seeing what they had going on because I'm a gearhead and I love that stuff. But I had to say, fine, I'm just not going to follow you anymore. And that was a conviction I had, and I had to follow that conviction.
Yeah.
So on the more broad scheme of things, yes, Christians should be online, but we should also be very, very careful, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, you're totally right. Mm-hmm. And I think it extends to more than just the obvious, know? Because, I would say that when you're verging on what is appearing to be pornographic content, most Christians know better than to just, it's fine, just leave that on. Mm-hmm. I had a similar experience back a few years ago as well, where the majority of what I was watching on YouTube were video game playthroughs, or speed runs. Mm-hmm. It was guys playing games, but the things that they'll talk about, they'll be just they'll be cussing a bunch. They'll be making jokes about like sex jokes and things like that, and they're just making all these racial comments and things like that, just stuff that's not true and noble and right and pure and all the things that we're supposed to be thinking about as Christians, and filling our minds with. And so I was noticing that the more I watched that content, the more I started to act like that. And if I'm trying to represent Christ in every area of my life, I can't be relying on this content to entertain me that is so not of Christ, And so I felt convicted as well to unsubscribe from those channels and just block their content. And it's so sad to me because I still like that kind of stuff a lot, but like most gamers fall into that kind of, world, and maybe some will call that like, you're being too pharisaic or whatever. You're being too hard on yourself or too hard on people. But no, man, if that's a conviction, you got to follow that conviction,
Well, and then, so this is the point I want to stop and say, okay, we felt the conviction to teach. But now if you're feeling a conviction that you also want to be on YouTube, and maybe it's not teaching, maybe it is you want to be a gamer, but you also have the Christian values.
Yeah.
Be that.
Yeah, please. Because I would love to see a channel like
Bridget
that.
will watch you.
I will. Send me your Call of Duty Zombies playthroughs talking about the gospel. That'd be awesome.
Exactly. Like, there is a huge realm on YouTube that you can be a part of from so many different angles.
Yeah.
But we need Christ being spoken through that.
Yeah.
Because people are going to watch you maybe for the video game or maybe for the car thing or maybe for the workouts.
Or the makeup tutorials. Like
makeup tutorials, whatever. But if you can use that as an opportunity to also witness, how beautiful is that?
That's great.
Somebody told me the other day there's a guy that does tractor stuff and teaches people how to work on their lawnmowers and tractors, and at the end he gives a Bible verse. He's not going to shove it down people's necks, but at the end he says, hey, if you want to follow Christ, here's something that might encourage you today.
Yeah.
What is wrong in that?
Yeah, here's some encouragement from the Word of God.
Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful, and that's how we should strive to be as an online presence.
Yeah, but make it genuine. Like, be yourself.
Yes.
Like, when you see me and Jacob on here, this is just how we normally are. We just talk like this all the time about theology.
Yeah, we're just goofy and
We're
dumb.
nerds.
And like, that's the whole thing of making it the Christian boys is we're the boys. We're silly. We're dumb. Yeah. We don't take ourselves seriously.
But we take the gospel very seriously.
Very seriously.
Exactly.
We'll make a shirt out of that.
We should, actually. If you want to buy a shirt, please don't. We're not here for money.
No, but what my whole point in this is just saying that, if you're going to be online, be aware. Be aware of what you're consuming. Be aware of what you're putting out, and do all things that would honor the Lord. Do everything you do in a way that would honor the Lord, because that's ultimately what matters.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're working, if you're praising, if you're putting things online, if you're eating, do it all in a way that would honor the Lord.
Yeah.